Hello, Kirsten. Thank you for being here today. We know that you are the creative director of FLACK, and we're just very happy to have you here today to talk about homelessness, who FLACK is serving, and about homelessness in general. So, just tell me a bit more about FLACK. What does FLACK do?
Okay, well, FLACK is a social enterprise and a charity, and the main thing that we do is produce a monthly magazine. What's unusual about our magazine is that it's entirely produced, all the artwork, all the content, every aspect of producing and distributing the magazine is done by our members who happen to be homeless or in recovery from homelessness. So unlike The Big Issue, which is a national magazine and is written by professional journalists, FLACK is a magazine written by homeless people. And by getting involved, homeless people find that through the process of having their skills valued, being able to make a contribution, that helps their recovery from the traumatic experience of homelessness.
Yes, and so FLACK is really a social enterprise focusing on serving the homeless people to just get them back on their feet.
That's right. We work with homeless people's potential, not their problems. There are plenty of other agencies in the city that work with very real problems, like not having any shelter, maybe not having many clothes to keep warm, needing somewhere to get hot food, needing somewhere to do your laundry, to wash yourself, your health issues. So we're very fortunate in Cambridge in that there's a good network of I call them first aid services for homelessness, immediately dealing with the immediate problem. What FLACK does is provide opportunities for people to rebuild their self-respect and their self-esteem, to use their skills and to relearn skills which are often lost during the process of homelessness in order to feel part of mainstream society again. Absolutely.
And about the people that the FLACK serves, I mean, how old are they usually? Are they from a particular background or are they just from everybody, anybody?
Yeah, homelessness can affect anybody, so and that's reflected in the groups of people, in our members and in the people who access our services. But the City Council has a statutory right to provide housing for under 18, so our age range goes from 18 to 60 plus, although unfortunately I will say that homelessness is very bad for your health, and in fact the average age of death for a homeless person is 42, which is extremely shocking. So it tends to be actually that our average age is between kind of 27 to 40. That most of our members seem to be in that age range.
And through your time in FLACK, I mean, do you observe, and like FLACK has been in the area for quite a long time, and throughout your time, do you observe any changes in the people that you serve? I mean, are the homeless people, are they increasingly coming from a particular background or particular age, or?
Well, FLACK is a relatively young organisation. We're 3 years since the beginning of the idea for FLACK. Kind of constitutionally we're just over 2.5 years old, but I've been involved in homelessness in Cambridge for over 20 years, so yes, I have seen a lot of changes. Particularly recently, in the last year, there's been a massive increase in homelessness, and that's a kind of reflection of the recession, and also of the current government's policies in terms of benefit welfare cutbacks, which are affecting the most vulnerable and the most poor. So I would say that homelessness is now more likely to affect a wider range of people than say 20 years ago, when the demographic was much more people who had entrenched mental health or drug and alcohol addiction problems.
How about now?
It can affect anybody. I mean, it really, none of us, we're all about 3 pay packets away from homelessness.
I see.
The reason is the chronic shortage of housing. That's the cause. There just simply are not enough affordable homes, and therefore the most vulnerable, the people in trauma, people for whom life is difficult for one reason or another, tend to fall to the bottom of the pile, and there just isn't, particularly in Cambridge, there is not enough affordable accommodation, particularly for single people.
Yes, and I mean, we talked about like a variety of reasons that people can become homeless, like family problems or affordable housing. There's a particular, I mean, how long does it take for people to go beyond homelessness?
Well, that depends on the quality of the services that they access. Homelessness, once you've hit homelessness, as in you literally have nowhere to stay, a lot of people, the stop before that is sofa surfing. And depending on the strength of your social networks, how good your friends are, how patient and supportive your family are, people can never hit actual rough sleeping. Sofa surfing in itself is a very stressful experience. You are constantly imposing on other people's space. You're constantly feeling you need to hide yourself away. Everybody likes their own space, and inevitably goodwill and friendship runs out, and people say, actually, we want our sofa back now. So that can take a long time. I mean, waiting lists for social housing in Cambridge are 7 or 8 years. But if you end up rough sleeping, and if you're lucky and you can get a bed at Jimmy's Night Shelter, I'm talking about Cambridge here.
Yes.
If you're lucky and you can get a bed in Jimmy's Night Shelter, if you are able to hold on to your mental health, not get too depressed, if you're able to resist the temptation of drowning your sorrows or drugging your sorrows, because I'm afraid, unfortunately, heroin dealers know that heroin is a very good painkiller and will offer, their mission is to get people addicted, so you will get free heroin. So if you manage to avoid the temptation of drink and drugs, and if you are then able to access a hostel room in one of the hostels, again, all of these things are incredibly under pressure at the moment. There's an awful lot of people who can't even get into Jimmy's Night Shelter. If you're really lucky, a year to a year and a half, if you really work well, if you're able to maintain your mental health, if you avoid the dangers of drink and drugs, if you've got something to keep your self-esteem and confidence up, you keep your skills fresh so that you've got a chance of being able to get a job, then 18 months to 2 years. But I'm working with people who've been caught in... The problem with homelessness is 68% of people develop a drink or drug problem after becoming homeless. It's extremely bad for your health, so health issues, particularly mental health. Awful lot of homeless people get depression. The instances of suicide are 35 times more increased if you're homeless. It becomes a trap. You are locked in a system where you only ever meet other homeless people and other homeless professionals who work with homeless people. You become stigmatised. You're a victim of violence. There's been a 300% increase of attacks on homeless people in Cambridge in the last year. An awful lot of terrible things happen to you. It can happen to you once you're in the homelessness system. All of those things destroy self-confidence, destroy self-esteem, and people get trapped. And so I'm working with people who I've been working with for 6 or 7 years, and they are still caught in this, what's called the revolving door of homelessness.
See, and can they not get out of this revolving door themselves? I mean, we talked about self-esteem, we talked about confidence, and yet it takes 1 to 2 years, and that's, as I said, very lucky people to do that. I mean, can't they get it out of them? Can they get out of them themselves?
How would you suggest you do that? So how would you suggest that somebody who is having to sleep rough, so is having to carry all his, usually it's a man, worldly goods on his person, is having to find shelter every night, is having to... so that's the immediate, that in itself is a very time-consuming. To keep yourself safe and warm, particularly in the winter, is a very time-consuming thing. Even if that person has skills, he has no address, so therefore no employer will employ him. He has no address. You are then caught into the benefit system, then the health issues come on because you're sleeping in the cold, you're maybe been attacked, all sorts of... So basically your life becomes consumed by your homelessness. So the first step things, if you can't get a job, you can't find somewhere to live. If you haven't got somewhere to live, you can't have a job. So you get caught in a trap. And unfortunately, homelessness has an extremely negative image. Very, very destructive stereotype. People view homeless people as rubbish, scum of the earth, wasters, druggies, drug addicts. They expect violence, they expect dirt, they expect aggression. None of these things are reflected actually in the homeless people we meet. But if you are constantly treated in that way, if you go, even at Jimmy's night shelter, if you go there for the first time, you are searched with a metal detector. Now, what kind of message does that give to you? That gives you a message that you are suspect, that you're being treated as potentially dangerous. It also tells you that all the other people are potentially dangerous, so it makes it a very scary environment.
Yes.
All of those things destroy your self-esteem, destroy your confidence. Your diet is very poor when you're homeless. You can access a fried breakfast at Winter Comfort. That's your only cooked meal in the day. Winter Comfort shut on Saturday and Sunday. So you've got somebody who's living under that kind of stress. And then you say, well, why can't they get out of it by themselves? I mean, in fact, they're doing well to survive. And therefore they need a help. They need help, and they need to be treated with respect. They need to be treated without the expectation that they're a violent drink or drug addict. They need to be treated with, and that's what we try and do at FLACK. So anybody who comes through the door, we don't have any negative expectations. And what we ask them about, we first check that they're hooked in with the right services to meet their immediate needs. But then we ask them, what are you interested in? What are you good at? What would you like to do? You know, what skills would you like to learn? And so that's why we say we're focused on potential, not problems.
Focusing on the good sides, focusing the next step, the future.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. And how can people who are seeing this video now actually help? How can they take part? How can they actually contribute?
Well, I think the first thing they can do, just simply in their everyday lives, is every time they see a homeless person or hear homelessness discussed, challenge any suggestion that homeless person, any suggestion of a negative stereotype around. So, you know, we've all got very, very good now in the last 30, 40 years about challenging racist and sexist statements. We need to be challenging assumptions that homeless people are violent, dirty, criminal, addicts. We need to be completely revamping the image of homeless people, taking away that negative stereotype. Something else you can do is simply, if you meet a homeless person, probably you're most likely to do that through somebody selling the big issue, or in Cambridge somebody selling FLACK. Don't ignore them, or somebody even begging. If somebody's is so desperate that I personally don't give to beggars, but that's a personal decision of my own. But what you can do is acknowledge them as a human being.
Absolutely.
Look that person in the eye, say, how are you? Or I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you any money, but, depending on but you can at least acknowledge their presence on the street and not ignore them. And that's the first step. Because homeless people talk about going out into the city and feeling like there's a neon sign over their head saying homeless, and that people despise them and abuse them and attack them. I mean, the level of attacks on homeless people by young drunks out on a Saturday night is horrific. And there are, I read a police report recently of gangs of youths planning attacks on rough sleepers who they knew were sleeping out in the undergrowth on the outskirts of the city. So deliberately going out and beating, and they think that that's okay because the person is homeless, and it's not okay.
It is not.
And, homeless people, I've worked with homeless people who are Cambridge graduates, who've run businesses, who've brought up families, who have made huge contributions to society in their lifetime, and for one reason or another, usually it's a mixture of reasons, things have conspired so that they've ended up becoming homeless, and they really don't deserve to be treated with
because it's out of
disrespect.
control.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And because the system is stretched, there are huge loopholes in the system. Our welfare state is missing out. There is, and it comes back again. There is simply just not enough affordable housing.
Yes, sir. Yes. And just talking about affordable housing and government policy and the welfare system, we're actually incidentally going to interview the MP Julian Herbert this Friday. I mean, if you have a question you want to ask him, what is that question?
How does it help the housing problem to remove the requirement on developers who are building new housing developments to build social housing?
So how does it help the housing problem?
The government has recently removed the requirement. So you've got developers who are building big new neighbourhoods across the country.
Yes.
Up until now, they have been required to build a certain number of those houses as social housing to be rented in the social housing sector. The government has removed that requirement so that the builders can just build all their houses for sale. That is just terrible. I mean, it's a fun. What will happen? The result of that is that we will have social housing ghettos in certain parts of the city, probably very far removed from the city, and very privileged private housing developments, gated communities. And why? That's my question. Why is that a good idea?